Welcome to First Bite, our Detroit Lions interview podcast. We are right in the middle of our Lions draft review where we talk to the people that were closest to the Lions draft picks, and we've got a doozy of a show for you this week. We are talking Lions 5th round pick Colby Sorsdal. But before I get into our guest, let me bring in my co-host. Filling in this week for Ryan Matthews is our managing editor of Pride of Detroit, at Eric Schlitt on Twitter. Eric Schlitt is here.
Hey, buddy. It's you said OL talk, and so I decided to come running.
That's right. And I'm so excited about this one. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Jeremy Reisman, by the way. I'm the manager, producer of Pride of Detroit at Detroit Online on Twitter. But let's get to our guest already. He is the founder and owner of Offensive Line Masterminds. He is the lead coach for the Final Five OL Academy, and most importantly, he directly trained Colby Sorsdal. Duke Manyweather is here. Duke, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
and like they always say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so I'm gonna
that's right.
I'm gonna crack a beverage.
That's right. Hey, go for it. Because this is going to be an exciting one. Let's start with how things started between you and Colby. How did that connection get made?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question and a really good story. I had watched Kobe earlier in his senior season, but I wasn't aware that it was Kobe's senior season. I was told that, he was a junior, had another year going back. So watched him and liked what I saw. And we're going to get into that a little bit in the show. But in November rolled around and I had a friend, Brian, who came, he goes, "Hey, there's a kid at William and Mary that I know his parents really well, and just take a look at him." And I'm like, okay, that sounds familiar. I think I've watched this kid. So all of a sudden I get on and it's about 5 plays in and I'm like, okay, I remember this. So the connection was made with a mutual friend of mine or a mutual friend of his family. And then the next step was kind of seeing what the post was on Kobe. And I probably got some scouts and some people in some front offices in trouble because I started calling GMs, like the GMs I have a great relationship with. Hey, Colby Sorsdal, William and Mary, what do you know? We don't have anything on him. Our scout said that there wasn't anybody at William and Mary that was draftable. Interesting. So I called around the scouts that I knew, teams that I knew, Senior Bowl, Shrine Game. Like, what do you know about this kid? And there were some people, they were beating around the bush. It wasn't oh no, he sucks or he can't play. It was just like, and when I start to hear that, then I know that they haven't watched him. And I know that because there's this thing in football scouting where by that point, November, December, most guys are talking, oh, I've watched 500 players. I've watched everybody. But me specifically, they know when I'm calling or texting and I got a name for them, they're like, damn, we missed that one. So all of a sudden, I started sending clips to a couple of GMs and they're like, oh man, they're like, we missed him. Like, I'm going to watch him. I'm going to write him up. So there was probably 10 to 12 GMs that I started sending his film to. Then they started digging deeper. And then all of a sudden, my phone started ringing a lot. And me and Kobe had already made the connection. So I kind of knew that though people were late to the party, we probably hit a sweet spot in terms of putting him on the radar. And then he went out and had a great Shrine Game or Shrine Bowl, I should say. And we kept expecting a combine invite. It didn't come, which didn't matter. I mean, there was some wonkiness to the combine process this year anyway. And he ended up going out and having a tremendous pro day, and a kid that a lot of people, when I was starting the process, was saying that he's going to be undrafted, may sign as a free agent. We don't know. 5th round draft pick. And I think that in years prior to this, he's probably a late 3rd or 4th round. The board was just weird this year, the way it fell. So that's kind of the origin story of Colby and I, and then we'll get into, of course, some more detail here coming up as we expand.
Is that a common process on how you end up training and working with guys? Like, is it just who it's a friend of a friend who gets a name to you and then you end up connecting, or is it usually something? I guess, how do you
No,
do that? Okay.
no, not at all. So I've already started my process for next year. It's really a hands-on approach. Like, I don't care what school you played at. I don't care what level you play at. If I'm watching you and I'm evaluating you, which I do, I watch and I evaluate every guy that I work with. It's not a word of mouth thing.
Yep.
I've turned away top 10 picks. I've turned away first overall picks over the last 6 or 7 years, just because what I watched on tape and sometimes what I gathered, just it wasn't a fit for kind of what we do. Like, we really obsess about um, the development aspect and the process of it. So if the player doesn't fit that, if the player doesn't per se pick that type of lifestyle up, what it is, then it's probably not going to be a good fit. But let me go to my notes here because I'm going to kind of
Sure.
show you. Um, this is the list that I'm working off of already for next year.
Wow.
So I've got about 45, 50 names that I'm already working off of, broken down into tackle, guard, and center. That I've watched most of these guys, and I'll continue to keep a tab and a running note on them all year. Just kind of, here's what I see, here's what's transferable. This is my approach if I was going to work with them, and so I try to be very thorough with it, and then I'll go back. Like with Kobe, I went back and watched 2 years worth of games, and I watched every snap, because one thing that ends up happening is that, and you'll see me on social media, I'll argue with people, because what I'm confident in is that I know it doesn't matter if it's NFL or college, if I'm engaging in a conversation and I have an opinion or a take on a guy, it's because I've watched every snap. So there's nothing that's going to come to me by surprise. I understand the context of it. So I watched every snap of Kobe, and what that allows you to do is formulate a prediction of not really who the player is then, but like what's his capacity for development. And I think that's important, because if you see a guy that's getting better from year one to year two to year three, and you're like, oh man, this guy's best football is still ahead of him, then hell, I mean, you got something to it, you know. So it's just working through that process and doing your due diligence in the process and not skipping a step. That way, there's no stone unturned when working with these guys, and then putting together your development plan for them.
So when you see that tape, when you start digging into Colby State, what do you see that is like, okay, this guy is exactly a fit for what I want to do with him?
Well, biggest thing that I always tell guys or tell people when they ask, I was a small school guy. I went to a Division II school. I was an undersized offensive lineman, and so I understood my controllables. My controllables, just for even me getting onto the field, was I had to train hard. I had to perfect my technique. I had to know what everybody was doing. I had to, I wasn't the biggest or most athletic, so I had to have tremendous play speed through preparation. And Kobe's a little different, because he's got the size, he's got the physical traits, he's got the ability. But I'll say the key physical trait or critical factor when you're watching these guys that come from FCS or come from Division II or come from Division III even, um, is they physically dominate. And they physically dominate at a high rate and a high percentage. They're putting guys in the ground, they're running guys to the sideline, and you don't have to watch a long time to see it repetitively and repeatedly happen um, when those guys do that. And so one of the common denominators is the small school guys that end up making it in the NFL, that end up being starters, are the guys that physically dominated, um, at their level. And if you go back and you look at guys like Ryan Jensen when he was at CSU Pueblo, physically dominant. When you look at Ali Marpet at Hobart, physically dominant. A guy that I worked with a couple of years ago, Quinn Miners, Division III, physically dominant. Trevor Penning, I worked with last year, physically dominant. Go back to Brandon Fusco, Taylor Boggs, guys like that. They were physically dominant in Division II. So when I look at that, Alex Kappa that now plays for the Bengals, physically dominant. So when I look at that, that's typically a trait and a critical factor that one is a non-negotiable, but two, it lets me know, all right, this guy's got a chance. So watching Colby's tape, the physical dominance stood out immediately. And then within the physical dominance, or I should say aside from it, in conjunction with, he had really great body positioning, played with good leverages, great technique, tremendous footwork, was very efficient with his movement, never looked out of control, always finished whether he put guys in the ground or not, but he just gave an added extra. Wasn't challenged much in pass protection, which I don't care what level you play at. There's going to be times where somebody gets you out of position or gets into your chest. And you just didn't see that with him. You saw above average hand usage, him being able to swat down a long arm, him being able to lift up a long arm, him being able to trap guys down, being able to refit and anchor. So that play strength also was something that stood out to me. It doesn't matter what level you're at. If you are physically dominant, you're always in good positioning, and being in position to recover when you need to be is important. Like, that's really what O-line is about in the NFL, is being able to recover. And so Colby was always in position to recover, what we call be where your feet are. And then just the play strength. It was his play strength was off the charts for that level. So when I look at those things, that lets me know that a guy's got a chance. And when I met him and I saw his personality and I saw just kind of what he was willing to do and willing to invest and willing to put in, it let me know that, all right, what we saw on tape married with the mental component of it, we got a player here. This is going to be a pro guy. So those boxes were checked, and here we are.
He played right tackle exclusively, right?
Yep.
But with the Lions so far, he's been repping at right guard, and I think that's really where his future is, especially with Sewell. Can you talk about the challenges of switching from tackle to guard and why you think Sorsdal might be able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm never a fan immediately of just saying, hey, a guy can move in as a guard, or hey, a guy can kick out to tackle. And I think you guys got a pretty damn good right tackle in Panay Sewell. Panay Sewell was a part of my TV show a couple of years ago, the Big Boys Club.
Right.
You know,
yeah, with Jeff Schwartz. Yeah, terrific.
So
yeah,
that was the inaugural year of the Big Boys Club, and that was a pretty good class with, Panay, Rashawn Slater, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Quinn Miners. I think those are some names that are going to be playing for a very long time at a high level. But Colby was predominantly, actually, I think all right tackle. I don't think he played any left tackle the previous years either. But the way he played, again, going back to what I was talking about with his body positioning and just the base he played with, he was able to stay square a long time, didn't open up. So when you look at those key components of the way he played and the way he won, like the transition into guard is probably going to be, it's going to have his ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But I think once he finds just how fast it happens on the inside and gets his timing and solidifies his set in real time, not just in training like we have been, that he's going to be fine, because his brand of football, which is physical, which is in your face, which is aggressive, is kind of what you want at guard. And when I saw that he was drafted to Detroit, it got me excited, because I've been saying for the last 3 years, really, that right guard spot has been a revolving door. There's been okay play there when you even look back at, Dahl and Glowinski and guys like that. Even when Dan Skipper has gotten in, whether it's right guard or left guard, it's just, but there's never been a settled starter there that has just been a dude that's going to come in and kick the shit out of you and with that mentality. So I think that there's a great, and this is not to just say that, hey, he's penciled in as a starter, but I know the mentality that Colby has. And I know what Panay provides at right tackle. I know with Jonah Jackson and I know what Decker like to do. Like I think he's going to fit in that room really well, and he's going to compete. That's for sure. So I think if it came down to it, him competing, you may have found a starter in a 5th-round draft pick from a small school that's going to play a physical brand of football.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I'm sure the Lions are going to take him along slow. They got Big V there to maybe help him with that transition as well. Another guy who's gone from tackle to guard. And it's funny you mentioned speed too, because that's something Sorsdal has already said. Like the speed, the game comes so much faster at you when you're inside. But
Everything happens faster.
Yeah,
everything
exactly.
happens faster. Like you don't have that space and the timing that you would if you want to play with your hands low. And there's more chess moves on the outside with space and timing versus inside. It's like a guy is on you or in your chest or on your edge immediately. So you got to be really definitive about your set. You got to be really intentful with what you're doing with your hands in terms of having a plan, whether it's on target. And again, you either got to create space off that line of scrimmage at guard, or you got to close space if you're going to aggressive set. And there's no better kind of person to mimic than some of the stuff that Jonah Jackson does with some of his short set and aggressive sets as well. So it should be fun. It should be fun. It'll be good because the Big V would be good for him as well. I mean, but Big V really is still making the transition to guard.
Yeah.
It's a different position.
Can you talk a little bit about what you specifically worked on with Sorsdal? What was a lot of that? Like, did you guys kind of foresee that he's probably kicking into guard? So is that what you worked on? Or
We prepare for everything.
yeah,
We work right side, left side, guard and tackle components in terms of like, hey, this is what you need to look at if you do get moved inside. We didn't work too much center. There were some teams saying, hey, has he been snapping? And with some guys, I'm like, hey, we need to get you snapping. With Colby, it was like, hey, we'll have you snap a little bit, but like let's not get wrapped up into to snapping just because like I saw like his leverages and to me he was a tackle that can move in the guard. Like it wasn't I didn't want to not that it's a waste of time, but I thought it was more valuable for us to get him right side and left side reps at tackle and right side and left side reps cross training at guard as well versus adding in the mix to center. Not saying that it's not important because it is. I think center is probably the most important position on the offensive line, but that's just that was part of his development plan.
With Frank Ragnow and Graham Glasgow and Jonah Jackson, they're pretty healthy at guys that can play center. So I think that'll give Sorsdal an opportunity to really focus on guard.
Yeah.
Schematically, though, the Lions run a lot of gap and outside zone. I personally thought that he had the movement skills to be able to fit into that scheme. Do you think that the schematic fit is a good fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So they ran a ton of outside zone and a ton of move and wide zone at William and Mary. They ran a little GT counter as well. But then again, we talked about his ability to run downhill with square power. I think there was a play. I can't remember the team. They're on the road. Team is a red and black team, but he ends up getting a deuce block like 4 plays in a row where they just kick the living crap out of that 3 technique, and then he's up onto the linebacker and takes the linebacker another 15 yards. So in terms of like the gap schematics, anything like that, whether you want to run dual power, he's got the movement skills to be able to pull on power. I think he's going to be a scheme fit no matter what you want to do. And here's the fact of the matter is, to me, a really good offensive lineman and a scheme fit offensive lineman is a guy that can do everything, where, fundamentals from the ground up. He can, play heavy, shades, in a zone, inside zone look. He can get loose and get out on the edge, on the outside zone, backside cutoffs and things of that nature. And then again, if he needs to stick his foot in the ground, same foot, same shoulder, or re-leverage and break stalemates, he's fine on that for the gap. To me, that's what a starter can do in the NFL. And the fact of the matter is I think most NFL offenses, especially in the run game, they're multiple these days. There's not,
Yeah.
there's not really a team that subscribes to, one way of doing things. And I think you have to be multiple, and I think you have to have flexibility, and you have to have the ability to be able to do a whole lot of things on Sundays to win games. It's hard to win football games in the NFL.
Well, you've called him multiple times, I think, at this point, a sleeper, and that's even dating way back to February.
Yeah.
When after he walked through your doors did you realize that maybe he was something special?
No, I knew he was a sleeper watching his tape.
Yeah.
Seriously, like
Yeah.
like I said, once I watched this tape and knew that people weren't talking about him, I'm like, oh. And again, like, so if we look at the past couple of years, I mean, I've had 50 guys drafted in the last 4 years or 5 years. I think it's somewhere like 8 first round picks. I don't remember how many in the top 100, but I think the thing that gets overshadowed a lot is when we're getting these third, fourth, and fifth round small school guys end up starting. Your Quinn Miners.
Yeah.
When we're finding guys like Trevor Penning, and putting them on the radar. Granted, Penning was a first round pick, but I take great pride in that being a small school guy is like, yeah, everybody wants to talk about the top 10 picks that we've had, but these smaller school guys that come in and just commit to the process, and like I said, that prerequisite is kind of that physicality and the physical dominance that you saw on their tape that kind of knows, hey, that's going to be a gateway to them being able to figure it out on Sundays. So to me, within that process, that is really that's when I knew Colby had a chance, though, is watching him and then just how he went about his business every day. He was the same guy every day. Some days he did get tired. Our program is extremely hard, but he got tired just like everybody else did in terms of when we were peaking guys and bringing them back down. And for Colby, one thing that I wanted to see was when everybody had completed their combine training and, for a period, it was just him there alone working. How was he going to be? Same guy, So that was important to me. After he finished up his pro day, we then put him into the actual pro group with some NFL veterans from the veteran off season. And he merged right in, started picking guys' brain, worked a lot with Rashawn Slater, worked a lot with Trey Smith, worked a lot with Teron Armstead. So for a guy that hadn't stepped foot in an NFL building yet, he had some pretty damn good mentors that he was actually shoulder to shoulder with, learning from. And that's part of the environment that we provide at O-Line Masterminds down in Frisco. So it's really Colby's special guy, but, the circumstances and the situation and the opportunities he's given, he's exhausting every single resource to be able to maximize that opportunity.
I don't know how long we have Duke for, so I didn't want to keep going. And
we can keep going. We're good.
Yep. Do you have guys that come back? Like, is that the standard how your program operates? Like, you have guys come back in the off season to continue to build and get better?
Definitely. So my whole thing is, I'm not just a combine training place. Again, I get probably close to 100 inquiries a year. Hey, I want to be a part of your combine program. And the fact of the matter is, I take 15 guys a year. It doesn't matter what school you went to, doesn't matter the level. I don't care if you're a top 10 pick. Every year we do a great job of getting guys, priority free agent guys signed, and they end up making rosters. Again, just like we talked about, we hear about the top picks, but I take great pride in the small school guys and the guys that aren't top picks that end up getting signed and make rosters. It happens every single year for us. But I take 15 guys, and I always tell agents, and I tell the players, here's the downside sometimes to this process. Agents have a fixed amount that they want to spend and invest in the player because it's dollar and cents.
Yeah.
A NFL football is a great game. It's a fucked up business across the board, from agents to teams to doctors. Like, there's a lot of scumbag stuff that goes on sometimes, and it can sour you. But what ends up happening is there's some agents and there's some players, and the players that understand their leverage as well. Like, hey, listen, this isn't just an 8 to 10 week program. You know, when you're done with combine training, when you're done with your pro day training, get your butt back here and let's continue to build upon what we worked on the last 8 to 10 weeks. We've had some guys that have done just that, and that have come back and really been dominant as rookies. So if we go back and we look at Eric McCoy for the Saints, as a kid that did that. He came back after combine. When we look at Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Rashawn Slater, Mekhi Becton, guys like all those guys that came back immediately after combine, they end up having phenomenal rookie seasons. And it's because, one, we start to address the things that some people saw as issues. We start to address those, and they've got months and months of reps and a way and a process to address those things. But then also they're learning from other veterans, and they're able to pick the brain. And so, like, a lot of times nothing catches them by surprise once they're in the building. And so I think that to Colby, being able to come back after his pro day was huge, and stay all the way up until, he had to go to Detroit. And as soon as, Detroit breaks for OTAs or from minicamp for the off season, I know the rookies typically stay a little longer, but I'm sure he'll be right back down here trying to fine tune and craft some of the things that may have come up during OTAs and rookie minicamp.
Well, before we let you go, I kind of want to know a little bit more about him as a person, because obviously that's kind of part of the fun for fans, is getting to know these guys as first timers. It sounds like he's got a tremendous work ethic. What else can you tell us about his personality?
Oh, phenomenal human being, man. Just life of the party. Loves Blink 182. Seriously, you ask him what his first concert was. Amazing.
That's a good tip. I appreciate that.
Yep, likes Blink 182. We've got a ping pong table in our facility. And so a name for you, a veteran, Hugh Thornton, that played for the Indianapolis Colts and the Atlanta Falcons and the Washington team. I think Kobe at one point owed him about 3,000 push-ups for lost games in ping pong. Oof. But infectious personality, always smiling, life of the party. And but when you turn on his tape, he's a mean SOB. So that's what I like about it. But I tell you what, he was a guy that I really tried to urge Fox to highlight on this year's Big Boys Club, because like Steve Avila, man, we had some characters. Kobe and Steve would have stole the show. And I thought it would have been a good story to tell to include Kobe, but Fox, of course, had other plans. But he would have been great on the show because he did have so much personality and does have so much personality. Detroit will absolutely love him. And I tell you what, if that kid goes out there, earns a starting job with the personality, he'll be a legend in Detroit.
They got a lot of personalities on the offensive line.
He's super friendly.
Yeah.
And he's also super appreciative of the situation that he's in. Like, he's very aware of the moment. He knows what the challenges are ahead of him. And he's awfully fun to talk to because you can feel his energy. And he said it means the world. Like, he said that phrase like 4 times. It means the world to be here.
Yep,
it means the world to do this.
I've heard that so many times. He goes, "You don't understand. It means the world to me." Yep, absolutely.
All right,
absolutely. Very, very appreciative, very humble, very self-aware. I think that a lot of times when these guys make the transition from college to pro, they lack self-awareness sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's how to be and who to be. You always got to be yourself, but sometimes you got to understand that there's a time and a place for all the things, and you got to be aware of that and read the room. And I think that's a lot of times where rookies struggle is just understanding the game within the game and the business side. And I think some rookies just think that this is your same old football, whether you went to Alabama or not, or whether you went to Georgia or not. NFL is a completely different beast. Don't
Yeah.
let these, don't let anybody fool you to say, oh, well, you went to Alabama, you went to Georgia, you beat. No, shit is a completely different beast.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of those guys from those big programs struggle because they've been told for years that, hey, this is, if you can make it here, NFL is a breeze. And then they kind of let their guard down and it's a completely different show. You
Yeah.
got guys that are in the locker room where, after practice in college, you might have went out and played video games. After practice in the NFL, you got a guy that has 5 kids and a wife.
Right.
You know, you got a kid, you got a player next to you that owns 4 other businesses. So the mentality is different. It's not
Yeah.
the same as a college locker room.
Yeah.
You're dealing with grown men with grown situations, and then also within the building, the people that are making decisions about you are guys that love football. Like that is their life. They dedicated their life to the NFL lifestyle of coaching, evaluating, or being a asset and a commodity to help bring guys along. So they are very judgmental that if that is not a part of your makeup, and that's why the combine process and the interview process is so important, because those guys are obsessive about football.
Yeah.
And even within my program, that's why I want guys that are obsessive about their development, because nobody's going to give a damn about your development more than you do. And if you do
No,
care about it in that manner, then I can meet you halfway, and I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to have your back too. But if I want to be great more than you want to be great, fuck, you might as well hang it up.
All right.
Seriously.
Before
no,
we let you go here, I want to give you the floor here to promote your stuff. I know you got some awesome stuff happening with the OL Masterminds, and maybe if there's any future offensive linemen listening, I'm sure they'd love to hear what you got to offer.
Absolutely. We've got a lot going on. So we'll kind of go in chronological order
Sure.
here. Um, and and first things first, we got our 6th annual O-Line Mastermind Summit, where we'll have our NFL veterans and some college players. We'll have coaches. We'll have Hall of Famers. We'll have all kind of people there. That's coming up at the facility. So we're looking forward to a great turnout. And then simultaneously, we're launching the O-Line Masterminds app. And the O-Line
Oh,
Masterminds app will be pretty much a one-stop shop for any level of football. It doesn't matter if it's youth football, middle school, high school, college, NFL, um, pretty much anything and everything that I provide. It's a way for me to scale myself. So in the weight room, on the field, mindset, all that type of stuff would be there and available in different tier packages. So people are excited about that. We've kind of started to beta test it and look at it and beat it up a little bit. It's going to change the game. There's nothing that has been out there that is this comprehensive, from how to stretch, how to warm up, to how much to hydrate, to uh, hand placement, things like that. Plus, on top of that, from the training aspect, we're going to have 6 years of O-line mastermind footage on there. Like
ooh,
I've released, clips here and there, 30 seconds
yeah.
here over the years, but full on conversations about
That's
the
cool.
jump set, full on conversation and player breakdowns on how we go in and attack Khalil Mack and Max Crosby. I mean, full on, Teron Armstead, Lane Johnson, Creed Humphrey, Rashawn Slater, the best of the best talking about this is how we do it. This is why we do it. This is what to look at. So this is going to be pretty phenomenal. And then for our high school group, if you're a high school offensive lineman, and it doesn't matter where you live in the U.S., come on out July 15th and 16th, sign up for the Final Five Academy. Essentially, what that Final Five Academy is something that I wanted to do something different. I was tired of the showcase camps where kids went out there, learned for 20 minutes, and then did 3 hours of one-on-ones and became a viral highlight reel and clip from getting bull rushed in a t-shirt. So what the Final Five Academy is essentially it's like 2 days and day in the life of how it would be if you were in our rookie transition program, like our combine training, plus O-line masterminds. So there's 2 classroom components a day, there's 2 field components a day, and then there's 2 weight room components a day. And that's for Saturday and Sunday. So I highly recommend fly in here, Dallas, July 15th and 16th. Sign up for the Final Five Academy. And it'll be life-changing for a lot of these high school offensive linemen. If you can't get out July 15th and 16th because slots are limited, definitely going to want to download the O-line Masterminds training app that's going to be released around the same time. We're looking to release the app around the 7th or 8th of July simultaneously with O-line Mastermind. And then if you're in Dallas or in the Texas area,
I was going to say,
get your Masterminds IPA. Definitely. We're in Whole Foods. We're in the DFW airport. We're man, anywhere you can really find beer now. We're pretty much Tom Thumb, Kroger. It's a damn good IPA too. Hop and Sting, my partners. We did a pretty good job with it. Very proud of it. And the best thing about this IPA though is the cause. We put a cause behind it that's near and dear to me. And it's, a lot of the proceeds, I would say majority of the proceeds actually go to help fund research for Alzheimer's. So we donate that to Alzheimer's research. And we're currently working on trying to make it even larger outreach for the cause. So a lot of stuff going on, but it's all geared towards O-line development. And then when you do have a downtime, what's better than a beer?
Lions travel to Dallas this year. If you're going down to the game in the Dallas Fort Worth Airport, make sure you could take a look and see if you can find some OL Mastermind IPA.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be around the airport, and then also right when you land, Hop and Sting Brewery is 3 minutes from DFW Airport. So you can hop into the brew room and then go to Vaqueros Barbecue, which to me is the best barbecue in the DFW area.
These are good
ask Colby about Vaqueros Barbecue. He's a frequent flyer there. But the brewery and barbecue is very, very close to DFW Airport. So Lions fans definitely stop in there. It'll be worth your time. It'll be worth the trip and the pilgrimage to do so. And then of course we've got the gear. A lot of people ask about the O-line Masterminds gear. Go to strikeleverageDriveFinish.com. And grab all the Masterminds gear. And man, thanks for having me, guys.
Of course,
fun to talk ball and talk about Kobe.
Absolutely, and we'll link all that stuff in our post on prideofdetroit.com. But Duke, thank you so much for staying a little extra overtime for us. We really, really appreciate it, man, and it's some great insight.
No problem at all. Look forward to coming back soon.
All right, we'll call it there. Thank you all for listening. We're going to do some overtime with our live audience here, but if you're listening to the podcast at home, thank you all for listening. We'll be who's next week, Eric? Where are we to?
Broderick Martin.
We'll talk another small school guy. So we'll tackle him next week. But until then, thank you all for listening. It's chaos. Be kind.